As we start in our unit on statistics, our main focus is going to be to take all these things that you've been learning over the past few years dealing with data and teach you how to analyze them. So today we're going to take a look at being able to analyze data using your measures of central tendency and range. So let's first start off by taking a look at some of these definitions. Most of these you probably know, but it wouldn't be a bad idea to get them down. Our mean is where we add all of our data points and divide by the number of values. And this is going to be used mostly when the data is mainly similar, where you don't have anything that is completely different from the rest of the data. Our median sounds just like it is. It is that middle value when all of the data is organized numerically. And this is going to be used mostly when the data set is varied or has that outlier. We're going to talk about an outlier in just a second. Our mode is that data value that occurs most often. And we don't typically use this very often as our measure of central tendency unless our data is not numeric or when we're interested in the most popular answer. Now, we've been using this term the last minute or so on measure of central tendency. So, probably wondering what that means. What that is it's the mean, the median, and sort of the mode. It's a general description of your data set that tells you best about our data. Then we have an outlier, and yes, I apologize ahead of time for the amount of vocab, but this is a heavy vocab unit. An outlier is that data value that is a lot larger or a lot smaller than the rest of the data. An example would be if most students got A's and B's on a quiz, and then you had that one person that got a D or an F, they would have what we called ruined the average and brought that down. And it's because it's not normal compared to the rest of the class. Range then is that highest data value minus the lowest data value, and it describes how varied or different that data set is. So let's take a look at some analyzing of data. We have our first example. Your phone bill for January through June was as follows: $32, $35, $48, $29, $31, and $35. So the first thing we're going to do is calculate the mean, the median, and the mode. So when we do this, if you recall, mean, we've got to add up our values. So we've got 32 plus 35 plus 48 plus 29 plus 31 plus 35. Now, one of the big things here is you have to remember that you have to do that first and put it in parentheses, because otherwise, if you don't put the parentheses in and you calculate without the parentheses and your calculator does order operations, it's going to just take 35 and divide by 6 as opposed to taking all of them and divide by 6. So if I take this, add it up on a calculator, and divide by 6, I get a mean of $35. Now, in our median, if you recall from the definitions, it's if we put it in order numerically. It does not matter whether you go big to small or small to big. I'm going to go small to big, so we've got 29, 31, 32, 35, 35, and 48. And then what I like to do is I like to cross them off. So I say, well, 29 and 48 are gone, 31 and 35 are gone. Now, one thing you might want to make note of is if there are two middle numbers, as in the case of ours right here, you're going to average them. So in our case here, we're going to take 32 plus 35, and we're going to divide by 2 because our median is right here smack dab in the middle. If we had an odd number of values, then that median would just be that middle number. When I take these and add them up and divide by 2, I get $33.50 as my median. Mode, as you can see, I have 35 appearing twice because it's the most often occurring number. So my mode is going to be that $35. So now my question is, which value best represents the data set and why? Now when I look at this, I see that I got, for the mode and the mean, data values that are exactly the same. So I'm going to say that the mean and the mode are the best values, and I'm going to put down because, and I'm going to use B/C for because, and I'm going to say that it's because the two data values were exactly the same. Now, one thing that I do want you to make note of though, is one of the things we talked about is that if you have an outlier, which we're going to talk about in a little while, that kind of alters your values, then you probably want to use the median. Now, one thing I will say is if you were to make an argument for the median and say the median because half the numbers are below it and half the numbers are above it, which means that that really indicates the center, I would be okay with that. Now, let's go on and calculate the range. I know that my lowest value, or I'm sorry, my highest value is 48, and my lowest value was 29. So 48 minus 29, I get 19 for the range. And what does this tell you about your range? Well, when we talk, it depends on, remember, if the range is large, it shows that you have a wide variation, or your data values are very different. And if you have a small range, you have a very similar data set. Now, one thing I will say is, in context, 19 represents money. A difference of $19 on a data or on a bill is a lot. So I would mark down that this has a relatively, and I'm saying relative because 19 doesn't sound like a lot, and this is a relatively large spread. And, or it varies, and I'm seeing, which we're going to talk about in just a second, that it has an outlier, which is what is causing this variable spread. Now, the next thing is defining any outliers. Now, when I look here, most of these range in the upper 20s to lower to mid 30s. And then we have this one value of 48. And when you're talking about a phone bill should relatively be around the same price. So I would have to say that $48 is an outlier. Now, when it says what impact does it have on the data set, it increases your mean. Because as you can see, if we took that 48 out of there, then if we took that out of there, that would decrease this average down to probably the lower 30s. Now, it also, as you can see, because that outlier is the highest value, it also increases the range.